How y'all doing? Welcome back to another build in the Herbig Design Co workshop. This time we're knocking up this big outdoor dining table for some good friends of mine. This one's going to be 1 meter wide and it's about 2.8 meters long. So it's a pretty hefty size. They do a massive Christmas lunch every year and this is going to sit right in the middle of that Christmas lunch for everyone to hang out. So let's get into it. It's going to be a pretty simple build. We're going to do most of it with pocket hole joinery pretty much all the way around. And some neat little tricks at the back end as we attach the legs on using pocket hole screws that aren't necessarily going to go into a pocket hole slot. So let's jump in, let's see how it comes together and get this thing built. So I've mocked up the tabletop and what I'm actually going to do is one of the cross braces, well I'm going to put a number of cross braces underneath and I'm going to pocket hole them from the brace up into the slats. But what I need to do is make sure I get the right spacing for the pocket holes and make sure I get the right layout for the top in terms of the spacing and the gaps. Especially as an outdoor table, I want a little bit of room to breathe between the boards on top so they can actually expand and contract. So what I'm going to do is do up what's called a story stick. So I just got this offcut of something from an old job. I'm going to run that across here and what I can do is I can mark on my story stick the placements for each of the boards. What I can then do is transpose those markings. You can see some of them here. I can transpose these markings across onto the boards. They're going to run across the bottom to be able to cut them down to size. So I'm going to finish up this story stick and then I'll be able to transpose all that across to these boards. So now that we've got the story stick done, I can take these markings and transpose them onto the boards I've got to go as cross members underneath the tabletop. So these will sit underneath the tabletop like this and the top boards will run across it like that. We'll run some pocket holes into these boards and up into the top pieces for the tabletop. So I'm going to use my story stick. I can now mark all these. Measurements onto my board so that I know where the gaps are going to be between the top pieces for the tabletop and where to place my pocket holes, and I also know where to cut the final cut and the final length for these. So let's get these marked up, drill out the pocket holes. I've got the leg pieces here, we can start to pull them together, and then we're going to go a little bit crazy and we're going to sand and finish the whole thing first and then assemble the tabletop, just because there's about a 3mm gap in between each of these top boards for the tabletop, and it's going to be annoying to try and sand and finish that. So I'm going to do all that finishing before I do the final assembly, and then we'll probably come back and put another coat of finish just on the top. But let's get straight into it. Let's get this marked up, get the pocket holes done, get the legs assembled, and move forward. So it's been a couple of days now. The leg frames are all assembled, dried. I've sanded everything down to 80 grit. And I'm going to stop at 80 grit because I'm using my finish I'm going to use this time around is a garden furniture oil. So it's going to be okay at 80 grit. It's going to keep a bit of texture in there. It's going to allow the oil to soak in a bit, help the timber last a bit longer. This isn't going to be out in the full-on weather. It's going to be undercover. But I still want to protect it, so I've used an outdoor oil. We're going to come back, I'm going to finish all these pieces up, and we'll get the assembly done. It's going to be much easier to finish these while they're apart, rather than having it all assembled to try and finish it and try and get in between all the top panels for the tabletop. So we'll get these finished up, and we'll come back and we'll start pulling the assembly together. So let's get into it. So there we have it. Our finish coat is on. Our cross braces, they're finished up. The legs, and of course all our tabletop pieces sitting here on the side. Now's the fun part. We get to come in and start to pull it all together into a finished tabletop. I'll get that done first, and then we'll attach the legs after that. So we'll lay out all the boards onto the workbench, work out our positioning for the rails to go underneath, and fix them all down. So let's get into it. You might be wondering why I've just gone to the hassle of putting tape along the edges here where this board's going to sit. It's all finished. The last thing I want to have to deal with now is trying to sand off and deal with glue squeeze out and all that sort of stuff. So what this does is a simple reference point. I don't want to draw lines across it either, because again, I got to sand them off. This gives me a simple reference mark to know where I can put glue on each of these boards underneath here to be able to glue this up when I drive the screws in. So let's jump straight in. Let's get this first board on and we'll start to make this thing come together. So we've got the cross braces on. This thing is now tight and tidy. It's all together as one unit. I'm going to come in now, we're going to add our legs on. So I've got our legs sitting up here at the moment. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add 8 holes in each one. And that's going to give me a pilot hole to be able to drive through some 1.5" Kreg screws. Now, I'm not going to use pocket holes to attach them, but I'm going to use the pocket hole screws. The reason for that being, I've got a couple of little packets here. The reason for that being that they have this pan head. Now this pan head is going to pull down on the top of the timber and pull it together really well without driving straight through it. So this is recycled Oregon, it's pretty soft. A normal countersink screw will probably just pull straight through it. The pan heads on the Kreg screws will actually do this job really well. So you don't have to use pocket holes for Kreg to use pocket hole screws. They can be used in a lot of different circumstances, and this is one of these cases. So let's get these attached. What I'm going to do is sit them just inside this cross brace on each end. So they're in a little bit from the edge, but they're not, too far in. So let's get that done, and this table will be a wrap. There you have it. That's a wrap on the big outdoor dining table. 1 metre wide, 2.8 metres long. So it's a fairly sizable table. It's going to fit a nice big group of people around it. We've got cross braces underneath it. So there's 4, as you saw, come on underneath it just to keep it nice and sturdy and keep it together. It's all slatted, so it's a bit hard to see on this angle from the camera, but as you saw when it came together, it's all slatted, so any water or anything like that on it, any weather on it is all going to wash off, it's going to run through. We've mixed up the pocket holes a little bit. We used the pocket hole screws to attach the legs. Again, that pan head is just a nice way of doing that. I'm going to get this wrapped up. I'm going to take a few photos that I've got here in front of my backdrop. I'm going to take a few photos to put up on my socials. Until next time, stay safe, keep building. If you want to see what else is going on in the Herbig Design Co workshop, make sure you check out my socials over on Insta, Facebook, or even on YouTube on my own channel. But until next time, we'll catch you on the next build.